No, demon, you are wrong. I die, but my soul is at peace with the Lord, while yours can never know peace, but only the all consuming hate. So live on, demon, for God's hand is in mine, and it shall be his that rules the world, and not the hand of hell. Ugh. I'm Ed Webb,
I'm Chris Spivey.
and today we're going to talk about issue 14 of Tomb of Dracula. Dracula is dead. I swear, like 30% of the joy I get from doing this podcast is just reading the opening quotes. And just watching Chris's
It is a lot
face.
of fun.
But
Ugh.
welcome to our second penultimate issue of Tomb of Dracula. Um, and it's been a ride, to be sure.
I'm just gonna say it up top. This issue was definitely something.
It was definitely 22 issues of illustrated story.
That all
Well,
right. I'm gonna save the rest of my thoughts till we get further into it. But that is just sit up top. So as we begin to descend into Dracula.
so certainly we're at the point where I mentioned before that issue 10 is where Wolfman starts to turn the comic into a serialized comic, and now we're deep in that. I mean, this we saw that there was progression from 12 to 13, and now we're going to see 13 to 14. And spoiler, but it's going to continue on to 15. So we're now more established into the monthly how a monthly comic is plotted by Marvel in the 70s structure. Um, but also we are in peak super cheap cliffhanger territory, which I mean, like we talked about this in issue 12. It's like, oh my God, a death of a vampire. And then 13, it's like, oh, but this vampire was killed. But no, actually, another vampire was technically killed. And then it's like, Dracula's dead. I'm like, but you have a whole comic called Tomb of Dracula. The title is Dracula is Dead. Is it just 22 blank pages? I don't think so. I mean, clearly something is not
Oh,
up here.
that would be like the greatest Banksy comic book move ever.
Right. Or even better, like, Dracula genuinely dies, and every issue after that is just following the vampire hunters going, "Okay, now what do we do with their lives?" And, like, it's just them trying to figure out their lives. They get straight jobs, you know? Quincy, decides to retire and set up, a garden. Blade, works at a burger shack. I mean, that's like the whole comic. Like, it just becomes like a slice of life comic after that. It's still called Tomb of Dracula,
I think
though.
Quincy goes off and starts his own like keeping bees and becomes a beekeeper.
There you go. Yes, yes. Rachel becomes an investigative reporter.
Ah, so
Drake, I don't
yeah,
know.
it's
Drake becomes a mediocre white guy.
all right. What did you think of the cover of this issue?
Um, it's not bad. It is definitely the weakest of the covers we've seen so far, in my opinion.
Yeah, hands down.
Um, uh, Dracula looks weirdly off model in this. Something about his face just looks off.
I
Looks more
couldn't
like
stop
Tony
staring
Stark.
at his little beady mustache that he has on the cover. That he has a. It's in the comic, but there's something specifically about this version of it that looks very weird and strange.
Right. It looks thicker, which changes the whole vibe of it, right? It's supposed to be kind of that long, thin, drooping mustache, and now it just looks like Tony Stark's mustache. So the whole thing kind of gives off Tony Stark went to a costume party and found a fainting woman and accidentally got surrounded by people hunting him.
Now that we're talking about, maybe my only thought is that they realized that maybe post death, Dracula should look a little different before he fully regenerates back to himself. Because even his hand holding her leg looks more bestial and animal like.
So what you're saying is Dracula's Regenerated is not being played by a different actor.
Yes, 100%. It's
Who
like
would you see
Dracula
playing Oh, go ahead. Mhm.
it's like Dracula fell down and hit his head on the console, and then they brought in a new actor next issue.
Wearing Dracula's, a fake mustache plastered on his face.
100%.
Who would you see playing early '70s Marvel Dracula?
If I was stuck with Doctor Who actors,
I didn't put that on
oh,
you, but if you want to.
well, I was making a Doctor Who joke, so I feel like I need to finish that bit now. John Pertwee.
Okay, alright. I can see that.
What about you?
I mean, I'm not gonna limit myself to Doctor Who actors, um,
Yes.
but I can see I do have to limit myself to Doctor Who actors?
For the first iteration of this question, yes.
Um, uh, oh, crap, who was that guy who played, the first Master? I blanked on his name all of a sudden.
Mm, Roger Delgado.
Not, yeah, Delgado, thank you, yeah, Delgado would be a great Dracula,
Yeah, that's too easy though.
right.
I should have been more specific and said doctors only and not Doctor Who actors.
Oh, in that case, um, if we're talking just doctor people who have played the Doctor, um, I would actually say, Patrick Troughton.
I see that.
I have seen him playing some villains in Danger Man, and so he can actually do creepy villain pretty well.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that.
Mhm.
If it was a non-doctor in the Doctor universe, I would probably have gone with the Brigadier
Okay, yeah, yeah. Sarah Sutton, right, there you go. She's played Dracula.
because he'd be more of the campy sort of Dracula from the 70s, the horror films,
Oh,
and
they
the Hammer horror films.
totally would. Oh, yeah, no,
I think
Nicholas Courtney would be like ha hand over the face Dracula.
Nicholas Courtney would have killed it, quite literally, in that role. You still haven't answered the most essential question yet. It just in the 70s, if you had to choose an actor to play Dracula, we won't even limit it by region or country or anything else. Who would it be? It has to have the essence of Dracula.
The define the essence of Dracula, because I define the essence of Dracula as someone who is charismatic and charming and just loves to talk his full head off.
All right, let me rephrase that. Has to have the essence of this comic book Tomb of Dracula, specifically Dracula. You said charming and everything else. This character is not charming. This Dracula
Uh,
has zero charm.
I mean, I thought okay, I see what you're saying. Supernatural charm. Uh, I think it might just be the mustache talking, but I keep wanting to think Burt Reynolds.
No, that's a solid choice. Very, very
Okay,
solid. Okay, we can stop the game. I was just curious
right.
about that one.
Because I mean,
Now, wrap
originally I
up
was
Burt
like,
Reynolds.
if you're going with the idea of like it's a relatively charming one, I was going to say Alan Alda. But yeah, if we're kind of just going for pure cheese, yeah, Burt Reynolds.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
Anyway, so the cover, not great.
What is
There's also
Dracula's obsession with blondes?
well, like in a previous issue, he was obsessed with a redhead, but that's just because that person has colored hair.
Yeah, because it jumps back and forth. So blondes, blondes, blondes is all Dracula goes after. And a spoiler, when they discuss some of Dracula's history in a different issue, because I've already read ahead, um, that person is also a blonde woman.
I could make extremely minor arguments that Rachel is also blonde, and so he's supplementing his hatred of Rachel to another women.
Would we
But
really call it hatred? Because shouldn't Dracula have killed her by now? I refuse to move on until we talk about the angry Clermontian villagers with their torches. They're vaguely European, and we have to take a beat to discuss them. They may not be hunting Nightcrawler, but they are hunting someone in blue with a weird accent.
I appreciate your J.M. Miles reference there.
as many as I can because they have the best podcast, which if you're not listening to, you should go check it out.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also the fact that Dracula's just crouched in a random square chunk of stone for some reason.
It's like a Nightcrawler crouch almost.
Kind of, kind of. Although I think this predates all of that actually. So
I could
Claremont.
see Nightcrawler holding a blonde, but she would likely not be unconscious, but he'd be holding a blonde, like rapier in the other hand, tail going back and forth, a bunch of villagers all around him.
No, unlike Dracula, Nightcrawler understands consent. So
Yes.
completely agree.
And unlike Dracula in this comic, Nightcrawler has something we like to call charisma.
Unlike Burt Reynolds. Anyway.
And for all you
um,
people that love 70s Burt Reynolds, I'm sure that you could probably I'm not even gonna make that joke, never mind.
I have not watched any 70s Burt Reynolds recently, but my memory of it is that he was amazingly attractive man, not very charismatic. Tom Selleck, on the other hand, that's a different story.
Burt Reynolds picked up Aunt May. What else do you need to know about Burt Reynolds? I'll let
Anyway,
listeners figure out which version of Aunt May.
is it okay to move on to page 1?
All right, we can leave the villagers alone. Although I'm gonna say that guy holding the torch and staring at you with the red eyes is not happy about it, but we can move on.
Also, his torch is really close to his hand. He's gonna start hurting himself real faster.
So I think my page one is different than your page one because I'm using the comic online from the app.
Uh-huh.
Does your comic have this this previously published content includes negative depictions of people or cultures that the stereotypes were wrong then and they are wrong now. Social change is a journey and we must acknowledge where we've come from to build a more inclusive future. Does your comic have that page?
It does not, um, which I know which storyline it's referring to. Weird that you didn't see that in the previous issue where that storyline started,
Nope, 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 nope.
but we'll get there. No, I have, a digital collection which doesn't have any of those actually, but mine's also dated 2017, so it's before I think Marvel started doing those disclaimers.
No, this is directly from the app, so I'm assuming whenever they update it, the app itself
Yeah,
updates and it updates the
then
comic.
they may automatically insert or something. Um, but guys, so the actual page 1 then, or the first page of comic, however you want to define it, um, a very it's the, recap of the cliffhanger from last issue, where Blade has straight up stabbed Dracula. And so the title says Dracula is dead, and Blade says, I've killed Dracula. Making no ambiguity about the state of Dracula. There's no other comic after this point. Dracula's dead. Obviously, clearly. Even the captions say the demon is dead. A knife thrown in
Well,
hellish rage by this vampire slayer known as Blade.
I love this. I knew it wasn't going to stay like this much longer, but the fact they went on a mission, these vampire hunters have successfully executed 90% of their goal.
Yeah.
Even
Um,
Dracula, for a change, like his face is sort of half and half. That's like a beautiful um, contrast that we're watching in the first on that first page. Love it. And Blade looked shocked that I've killed Dracula is more of the reading I get from it if you look at his face.
yeah, no, totally. And again, like last issue, he goes, "Mother of mine, I finally done it." And it's like, of mine is not what followed mother in that moment. But again, the actual dialogue still works perfectly fine because he's talking about his mother was the person that Dracula killed. So that still works, but also you kind of know it's not what he said. But no, I dig the fact that like last issue like where to kill Dracula, and it's like yeah whatever. It's oh shit you killed Dracula, and also that the comic 100% gives the kudos to Blade, which is well deserved. Like no, Blade managed to kill Dracula. Everyone else helped, but Blade was the person who put the final blow in. He gets the experience points. He gets the treasure. He made the final blow.
We're not in first edition D&D anymore, Eddie.
None of this. Everyone gets equal XP bullcrap. No, Blade gets it all.
Okay, since you've now moved us into to gaming territory, because you know this is my favorite part, what system would you place this comic in?
Um, does it have to? Well, I guess like it can't be contemporaries because none existed in '73. Um, I mean, obviously, the boring answer is like World Darkness or whatnot. One of the Hunter games. That would be the boring answer. Um,
If you said a boring answer, I don't want to like a specific which one, which
right.
incarnation, and why.
Yeah. So I'm actually just gonna kind of sidestep all of that. Um, Given the fact that these are reasonably, I won't say low powered. It's not quite true. They are human scale, but also they have weird abilities that are slightly. They're within human potential, but they're still also really, really good. And Dracula has straight up superpowers. Um, I honestly would consider maybe modeling this with the champion system
Hmm. Interesting.
because there have
All
been some
right.
pretty good source books for low powered supernatural hunters. I think, I mean, because the other option would have been a Palladium system beyond supernatural, but I wouldn't force a Palladium system on anybody. So,
Oh, we're about to have a fight, my friend. As someone that enjoys a Palladian system, someone that has played a whole bunch of riffs, and I don't mean this Savage Worlds riff that the whippersnappers play. I mean like the OG riffs where you have mega damage, where your scale of system is vastly all sort of warped and broken. Where you, as an undead slayer, and your buddy who is a superhero, on a team of 5, 7 other players are the OG stars, and you sit out fights when they complain about how awesome you are, so you can let them see how painful fights are without you, to then step in. I'm not saying I was an undead slayer and I had a buddy who played a superhero like Superman, and we were fighting a whole bunch of like I forgot the coalition soldiers, and our team was like Glitter Boy and some other people who complained that we tried to stop and help people in a village and said, "You guys don't know shit." I'm recounting stories now for TRPGs. And and you're like, "All right, motherfucker, then we're gonna sit out and let you fight this coalition army without us and see how you like it." And once they were
so,
getting their asses kicked, they realized that helping people is just as important as fighting bad guys.
so I have run riffs, and I actually the group I ran for one guy got really mad because I actually followed the rules. Um, 'Cause he wanted to play Glitter Boy, and I was like, "You'll play Glitter Boy, okay, that's cool. You do know that every time you fire your boom gun, you have to drill your feet into the ground, and
Yep,
you cannot move."
yep.
And he's like, "Okay, sure, whatever." And then so sure enough, he's like, "I'm gonna play boom gun." "Okay, I've spent the turn drilling into the ground." "No, I'm gonna just shoot it." "Okay." And then he flew across the battlefield and then broke his armor, and he's like, "I don't understand why that happens." "Did you read the rules?"
Oh, I love it so much. It is. I will rarely talk negatively about any system, but I gotta say, Rifts is the most broken system I have ever played, and I love it top to bottom. So it's still not a negative comment, just that the system itself should be tweaked and updated. But oh, I love it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is, like, one of the because I mean, I joke about the Palladium system, but the reality is, like, I played a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, I mean, like, I have a fondness for it because if you go into it thinking that game balance is important to your game, no, don't play any of those games. If you don't care about that,
Yep.
if you actually enjoy the wonkiness of it, then absolutely. I mean, and mildly going back to World Darkness, early World Darkness is just as bad, right? There is some wonky, broken bullshit in early World Darkness,
Oh yeah,
and I kind of love it for that.
celerity was like the bomb in
Oh,
early.
yeah. Basically, if you're playing a Brewhang, don't buy Celerity, you're dumb. Right, or especially early, World Darkness because Celerity is the bomb. Um, but I
Potence was
mean
nice, but celerity was like the capstone. That was
and actually, if you're playing original live action, Celerity literally was the bomb because you got to use the bomb hand signal. But anyway.
to bring it back to our comic. I think you're right to
Page 1.
put it in the Palladian system. Not I was gonna disagree with you, but like I said, I've read the next comic already. And look at that, I did my advanced homework.
Mm,
And there is a display. Oh my god, it's not even the next issue. It's this issue. There's a display of power that Dracula does that does not fit Nice Black Agent that I would have almost slotted it in.
yeah,
Or even a couple of a different issue to Dungeons and Dragons like I've seen the system working for. But that display of power easily puts it into a superhero game setting, and the scales need to be wonky for the power to work how it does. So
right,
100%
yeah,
agree.
yeah. Um, but on the next page, like, they're really emphasizing it's like, although they're really emphasizing that he's dead, although the way they determine this is the dumbest way of doing it if you know anything about vampires, because they check his pulse. And I'm like, "What?"
This just shows you though that they have never been this close probably to a staked vampire that they can go and play with.
Which okay, so to be clear, it's Quincy doing this. So, I'm not gonna put on all of them, although nobody contradicts him, so that you would think at least
Yeah.
Blade would know, because he's straight up killed other vampires?
So if anything, it could be it's I think it's a mix of that fact and that Dracula is so old, they're not sure what to expect.
Right.
The other vampires
Um,
when they staked, I think, turned to no, that was different concept, different universe. They
yeah,
turned to
yeah, no, and, like, the only other thing I can think of is that maybe just this version of vampires, they have a working circulatory system.
for this
That is
issue.
the right. It's the the only logic I think of is, like, if you stake the heart, they can't pump blood anymore, so if they've staked the heart, then that shows they're dead. But it is I will the most terrible thing to say is it is aged badly because it's like, "Oh my god, Dracula's dead, Dracula's dead. I checked his pulse, he's dead." I'm like, 40 plus years of vampire fiction, like, that seems like that's a really bad move.
And the reason how I know this is definitely not a role playing group or an actual game is because they stop to check his pulse. They look out the window, they consider their options. In a real gaming group, they would have immediately gone to cut off the head.
Yep, right. Yeah, because whole last issue, they were talking about you cut off the head, cut off the head, and now they're just like, "Well, let's just check to see if he's dead." It's like, if you kill off his head, that will really reinforce that he's dead because even if he's not a vampire, that will kill him. It's like so you
Violating the
establish this
rules.
is the way to kill vampires, and then that's just the one thing you're not going for. So you're absolutely right. It is a weird moment, but I will, to your earlier point, when you mentioned about how Blade looks, I can certainly argue a certain amount of they're just like, wait, what? We actually did it.
If it
And
was another comic book writer, I bet they would have had Drake say, "I know I killed Dracula." Yeah, I made my mediocre white guy joke, stealing credit of other people. I know
uh,
myself.
it's true. Drake is, but they realized that before they can cut off the head, apparently, um, uh, all the villagers that Dracula had spent time mesmerizing and controlling are now showing up to the morgue, with guns and other weapons. A lot of rifles, a couple knives, and they're
I
going to storm the morgue.
love this scene of you can see how they are all mesmerized just from the eyes alone,
Mhm.
and they're moving slowly even last issue, but now they start to move faster given Dracula's current state, and it's conveyed in the artwork. I love it. And the rifles make a lot of sense because if they're villagers, they would have rifles and other things probably to fend off against wolves and etc.
Right.
Versus a bunch
Mhm.
of like pistols that we would probably have in the US.
They make a note of like he gave his mental order right before the knife was plunged into his chest, so they kind of making sure they're handling that continuity. So Marv has certainly thought through the order of this. Um, and then Quincy's like, "Okay, quick, sever his head." Um, uh, uh, before they break in, but as Quincy gives the order, they start to break down the door, and so um, Blade has to instead Fedor's like, "Okay, Quincy, you need to cut off his head. We need to hold the door closed." And that lasts exactly one panel. The villagers manage to smash their way in. And then you get uh, peak 70s Marvel comic layout where like all the panels are slanted, but they're kind of on a grid, but they're also kind of slanted. And it was very much like them Marvel realizing, oh, we don't have to have everything in a grid anymore. We can actually play with that a bit. So it's not quite to modern standards, but it's dynamic. So everything's at an angle. So because it's cool and it's actually cool shapes. Um, and the coloring is like there's one scene right in the middle. There's a stripe across it where Blade's just fist fighting a bunch of villagers, and how they color it so that way, everyone's in Blade's in blues, but all the villagers are in different shades of purple and block colors. Um, and by block coloring, I mean just they're all one solid shade of color, as whereas Blade's a few different shades. Um, and it really the dynamism of it shows like, Blade is just willing to fist fight, it looks like 6 different people all at once and probably get away with it, which is awesome.
Love it so much. And then it doesn't even talk about the morality though of it. If they know they're mesmerized,
Mhm.
these people are probably fighting like they're fighting for their lives versus what a superhero would be, who would probably be pulling punches and everything else. So that's already a nice contrast in the different genres that we're in.
Right, because they have guns, like, at one point in time, Rachel's looking at a revolver, so, like, yeah, it's they are genuinely fighting for their lives here, and, of course, peak Drake is on the floor running between their legs because he is not a vampire hunter, he's just some guy,
Ah,
and then, Quincy gets knocked over. All the villagers suddenly leave after a few moments, and basically, it turns out that mass of humanity they just swarmed in, ignored all of the fighting. So, like, Blade wasn't fighting; he was basically punching people that were more or less ignoring him because they all swept in to grab Dracula's body and then left with Dracula's body.
it's more like a stampede they were trying to endure.
Right. Hmm.
Although
Yep.
we've seen Dracula love some blondes, and I don't see anything but guys in this mob of people that came out.
Well, that's why we only saw him feeding on the one woman last issue to mesmerize her. But you just kind of Oh, and by the way, all these guys too. We're not gonna show you any of that. That wasn't Dracula's fun time. That was Dracula's work time.
Oh no, I'm bothered by that. I think they should have shown some equal opportunity feeding and
I
mesmerization.
agree, but it was the '70s. You know,
Really, really. All right, I won't even make
it
my
really was the
my
'70s.
joke.
Yes, it was '73.
I will make my joke about free love from the '60s. That should have been right around the corner. Oh, you were
Well,
saying.
yes. Well, I mean, also the fact that it was a 1973 Marvel comic. I mean, they're just like, okay, listen, we'll let you have a black protagonist, but I mean, that's as far as we're getting. That's your one. That's all you get.
Right, because I even as we were looking at the cover, the thing that stood out for me the most in the cover was approved by the Comics Authority on this cover.
Yeah, yeah. Still, that's still a thing they're worried about. And then this storyline. The reason, the I suspect the main reason why you had that disclaimer at the front. Um, so the body that's all of the very clearly Chinese inspired people, or at least yeah, at one point they were actually said they were from China. So they captured a vampire. They brought him to Northern Ireland for some reason, and hilariously because like um so they have a panel truck, which is the same panel truck they picked up before, but they drove from London to Northern Ireland, which is famously a different island. So all I can imagine is they got in the truck, drove halfway across the UK, got a ferry with a vampire in the back, took a ferry across to Northern Ireland, and then drove the rest of the way.
Eddie, they just took the bridge over. That's all.
Yeah, yes, the well-known bridge between Ireland and the UK, or Ireland and Britain. Uh, yes. Um, and then we get up to this point, there's a certain amount of they're Chinese, but at least they're wearing suits and they're not speaking in a stereotypical accent too much. But then they get to the scientist, and he's just straight up every Chinese
Yeah.
racist stereotype. Even to the point where literally his skin is not a golden tint; it is literally just a color yellow. It's bad. Um, But
And the
they
long, sharp fingernails for when he's operating the machine.
right, yes. A long white beard. He's got the thin cloth, the small cloth cap on his head. It's ah, um, but they hook him up to machines to find out if this corpse is turning into a vampire, and it turns out he is. Um, they have a great three-panel scene of a it's a little scope in the guy's mouth, so you can watch the little fangs coming out and measure the length of the fangs. And it's like, oh look, he's got his canine teeth, and he's so cute.
Ridiculous.
But because he has canine teeth, he must be a vampire. That is the only thing you have to do to prove a vampire. You have canine teeth. Oh, boom, vampire.
Well, they looked at his eye and they said the iris is red. And even then, you could see the fangs in the guy's mouth.
Right, right. It's and
This
there's a humming all over it. All the time, which is kind of neat.
this guy's our thug, right? From the issue with the guy that was in the Iron Lung.
Yes,
Thought so.
yeah. So that storyline, we're like, oh, this is kind of a fill-in issue. You know, they didn't do much. Mark Wolfman's like, I'm actually going to plant a seed and follow this thread for a while. So again, we're now moving to references from several issues ago, not just direct continuity. And
That's the
uh,
best.
uh, this subplot is horrible, but like it is basically a couple pages last issue, a couple pages here. So it's that almost like you said, Claremontian. Let's play a small seed that's kind of interjected to the main storyline. This is your B plot in TV writing terms that we're slowly going to build up over time. Um, and then we go back to our group, and they find that Taj is alive after being thrown through a window. How? Don't know. Just he's Taj. He's awesome. He's mute. He won't tell you.
And you get the joy of Rachel actually seeing that he's still alive.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Taj is a really rough stereotype, but Taj is cool, man. I mean, like again, another character of color who's actually really cool. He survived. Peop Rachel cares about him. Taj is Rachel's friend, not a servant. And they just don't explain why. It's like no, he just survived because he's awesome. And I kind of dig that.
Yeah. He had a lot of hit points.
Did did again to our earlier point. Like there's we're creeping up to now. I was like it's within plausible human range. Now we're starting to pretty quickly shift into okay, but dude just got defenestrated out of a hill, and is like I'm fine. I'm like okay, we're perfectly into Marvel comics now. Um, but we then find after two panels of oh by the way, Tosh is okay. The villagers are carrying the corpse away, and we see that Dracula is genuinely starting to decompose. And this, for a while, raised some questions to me. These questions do get answered at some point, but because we didn't cover this, but the very first issue of Tomb of Dracula, when he gets unstaked, he's just a skeleton. And then stake gets pulled out, and within minutes he's back to life. So it seems like this is the reverse of that procedure. It's the if he gets staked and is dead, as far as killing a vampire, he starts to go back to that skeletal state, which is cool, but also brings up the question of what death really means. Because everyone's like, "Vampire Dracula's dead. The comic said he was dead. Last issue said he was dead. I've killed Dracula. Dracula's dead, 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 dead." We didn't kill off his head, so he's just in a skeletal state nowadays. With hindsight of having Vampire the Masquerade, that would be facially functionally torpor. But he's not just unconscious. He's literally changing state. He's decomposing rapidly.
I like that. Well, I like it though because it's a nice touch. It reinforces that he's 500 years old, and the
Mhm.
vampiric state when he's fully active makes all of that sort of recede and go away. But when he's staked, in effect, effectively that removes some of that vampiric nature, and it all gets to come back on top of him.
Right, and there's a metaphysical bit here which I like is that because he is no longer I mean, because he's decomposing. His brain is also rotting, which means he no longer has mental control over his servants because his brain can no longer hold his power because he is in this state of quasi death. And so halfway through, the villagers are like, "Holy shit, why are we carrying a coffin?" And then bail. And I kind of dig that.
And the thing about the 500 years, like the age is probably why he's able to maintain that form as long and have his power work for as long too. So like constant little reinforcing touches that Dracula is incredibly powerful at the same time defeatable.
Right, right. So it, we're starting to see nods towards building a semi-cohesive set of rules for vampirism, right? This is Wolfman has thought about, okay, if this happens, this happens, this happens, how this all ties together. These things change the state of things. So we're starting to set some rules down, which before, as we noted earlier, there were really no rules. Now it seems like Wolfman's trying to actually nail some rules down and retroactively establish some rules. It's not smooth by any stretch of the imagination, but like you said, it presents interesting things, and because Dracula's reacting differently, and because the captions reiterate several times how old he is, but it's 500 years this, 500 years this, 500 years this, um, uh, also establishes, you're right, that Dracula is the king of vampires, he's Lord of the vampires, so he's special because he's this powerful. But one small note that, you had mentioned, we talked about last issue, that you had imagined that Dracula had been planning this for a very long time. And there's a throwaway line where they get their control again, and says for the first time, perhaps in many, many months. So that actually reverses your point. Dracula has actually been planning this for quite a long time.
I loved it. Makes me wish I'd actually read all of these so I could have had more cogent thing to say when I first mentioned it. But sometimes it just feels good to be right.
If I'm honest, him Dracula being master planner only starts to really happen under Wolfman's pen. Before then, Dracula was just like, I don't know, I'm going to murder somebody and see what happens. I don't know, maybe blow up a boat. That seems like a good idea. Still mad about that.
So he
Um,
left his fuck around and find out stage and became a planner, is what you're saying.
right, right, yeah.
Yeah.
What if I actually spent months just mesmerizing a whole town? Yeah, that's cool. Let's do that. We'll do that. We'll do that. So we cut to the tent that Dracula flew over last issue, and we meet Father Josiah Dawn. And I'm not super knowledgeable about how faith has been expressed in the 70s in England, but I'm pretty sure they didn't have tent revivals
You don't think they had tent revival faith healers
in
just roaming
Surrey. No,
around?
because it specifically says it's in Surrey, and I'm like, 1, that's very far away from London, and 2, I just don't think they had those kinds of things, no.
So your
Uh,
biggest problem is that. My biggest problem is his name. Last name of Dawn. I can give you we have a son, we have a Dawn. I'm waiting for like another name now to pop up with that High Noon. I want someone's last name to be High Noon. Rachel High Noon. There we go.
Chris, you're saying this like the sister title, featuring a werewolf, wouldn't have a protagonist whose literal name is Moon Knight. Subtlety is not an option in these comics.
It's not Werewolf by Night where the lead is Jack Russell.
Right. Who the writer maintains that was an accident. I don't believe it. But yes, Josiah, Father Josiah Dawn, is losing his faith, because nobody's coming to his preaching anymore. And then he immediately is like, he throws the Bible in anger and is like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, the devil made me do it. I'm so mad. I want to just heal people in your name, Lord." But he's growing disenchanted, and feeling that everyone else has become too hardened, too bitter, too cynical of faith, and so he needs a sign. And his sign is, he looks out and sees a glowing coffin, and he looks in the glowing coffin and sees a dude with a knife in his chest is turned into a skeleton, and he goes, "That's a holy vision. That is a sign from God."
Well, come on. If you say, "I need a miracle," and you look out the miracle and you see a glowing light in the distance, you'd think that's your miracle. I'll give him that.
But I said a minute ago that, like, Wolfman's kind of establishing, his mythology here, but it's a bit uneven. This is the bit uneven clause, because why is Dracula glowing here? And it's not even like maybe it's a coloring thing. No, Josiah says, "There's something there glowing. Is it my burning bush?" So it is objectively 100% glowing.
My question, though, is
Regeneration powers.
why doesn't Dracula burst into flames if he's in direct sunlight? Is it because he's such a skeletal form that doesn't
Right, he's already
matter
dead.
anymore? Mm.
My understanding is that that one I took at is he's already dead. So, but are the bones gonna catch fire? It's like you're already the thing that would the state that fire would put you into, i.e., death, has already occurred. Um, but that does then, if my logic is true, it does open up the option that if he goes out in the sun, burns to a skeleton, if the skeleton is still complete by nighttime, he would come back up after that, which
Then
raises
that
interesting
makes
questions.
no sense because usually when vampires hit sunlight, they burn down to ash. Are you saying it's the flesh on their bodies that make them burn into the ash as an accelerant for the skeleton to
Right.
burn?
Now we're getting into the because Wolfman is starting to establish rules, you're now looking at all the other things and like, okay, but now these other things, because you set down rules, I now have more questions which start to invalidate the rules. So we're in an awkward stage of the mythology building, certainly. But I love him looking into a coffin with a guy in an opera cape as a skeleton with hair and goes, "I see the path you set for me, Lord. I'm gonna fuck this skeleton."
Oh,
um, so and of course we have the angry narrator options, um, where it's like, the God whose miracle we so readily accepted is a God not his own, for his is a God of love and peace, and certainly not the God of Stygian death. And this is just the captions talking shit. No, there's no character doing this. It's just the captions going, and this guy's an idiot.
but then you get the best scene. Literally, what you're talking about. The vampire hunters have effectively killed Dracula. What are they going to do now? Let's hang
Play
out and play
chess.
chess. And
Blade looks so bored.
I love it. But then that goes against part of Blade's entire thing. Is like once we kill Dracula, I still got vampires to kill. And instead, I'm just gonna hang out, chill.
Right. Also, canonically, Taj reads the Daily Mail. Because he's reading the London Daily Mail, which is not a real thing, but he's like, he reads Daily Mail. It's like, oh, cool. Um, but uh, because Josiah Dawn had got this, he starts up his church because Drake finds a poster saying that Josiah Dawn is a revivalist. He's going to bring the dead back to life, and he has a picture of Dracula as a skeleton in his coffin, saying, "I'm going to bring this guy back to life." And I'm like, amazing, because like the way this minor spoiler, but the way this is pitched is that this is this whole tent full of believers, but like only you see only a handful of people saying anything supporting that. So I believe like 90% of people is like, "Oh, I gotta go see this bullshit."
Well, he's not wrong. All right, on the next page, he's got Dracula in the coffin, which if
Right.
I don't know if you know about it, but I forgot who it was. It was a famous gunslinger who got killed, and there was this person that took his corpse around in a coffin and did like shows with it everywhere.
Oh, was that that was a Billy the Kid, wasn't it? Who died?
I, I don't remember if it was Billy Kid. Maybe like I'm still early for me, but off the
But I
top of
do
my head, I
remember that
remember
story, yeah. Mm,
and like bits and pieces of the person eventually fell off. I think the corpse even ended up like on movie sets and everything else until I eventually realized what it was. So I totally believe this scene that they're doing right here with him up there in his weird ass cloak now, no longer a suit, and Dracula
right.
in a coffin. Totally buy it, 100%. It would
And
reinforces
we
all those people came out to just see the shit, how you're saying.
right, and Josiah now suddenly is wearing, like, his own kind of robe with a cloak over top of it and, like, leather strappy boots for some reason, and it's just, like, just immediate pivot to supervillain. So, you know, gotta dress the part.
Maybe that's his revivalist outfit.
Maybe, maybe. But he stands on the stage pointing at the corpse of Dracula and says, "Tonight's the night for the truthful light of our Lord God." It's just like, oh my god, this comic is like I get the impression Wolfman might be a little cynical about religion. I'm getting that vibe.
Are you saying because of the screaming women, "Yea, Lord, give us the truth, Lord"? Are you talking about those people too?
Yeah, just a smidge. Just a smidge. Um, the vampires arrive at the revival, and of course, there's a huge crowd, so they're trying to push their way through. As Dawn reaches over and says, I'm gonna bring life back to these dried out bones," and starts to pull the dagger out. And Blade is like, "You idiot! Don't take the knife out! You've doomed us all!" And he's doing it while, like, literally just shoving a woman, his face is right behind this woman, he's just shoving her the hell out of the way. It's great. But so I was like, "No, the Lord says I have to take the knife, so take the knife I will, because that's the God's ways and not the ways of a sinner." Um, and Blade's like, "You're not following God. You're following, you're following Satan." And uh, uh, Dawn's like, "Oh, you're a blasphemer, blah 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 blah," And this time Dracula's immediately, he's like quickly getting all his flesh back on his body, and so it's like the Lord Himself will give you punishment, and then Dracula's like, "Nope, nope, He's true. I'm completely from hell." Blade's completely right. You fucked up. I'm gonna murder you now. He's like Dracula's like, "No, no, 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 no. I want no confusion on this point. I am evil. The fact that not calling me evil was really offensive. I am absolutely clear." Just love Dracula so much.
Oh god.
um, and then of course, he's like, "Oh well, then the Lord gave me knowledge of you and your kind, and spoke of your weaknesses." So, um, Dracula has woken up in the middle of basically a revival tent, and so they're like a million crosses around. So it reminds me of that the meme of the mecha pilot with the two panel meme where it's like the first panel is "I'm invincible," next panel is "Oh no," and this feels like Dracula. It's like, "I will murder you." Oh shit, crosses.
Okay. How much of Tomb of Dracula have you read?
um, I've read a couple issues beyond this, but there's apparently more stuff beyond that. I also read a random issue like 40 because it was a crossover with Doctor Strange, but I've not read a ton of the. Well, I take it back. I read a little bit of the 20s and 30s because I know where the Doctor Son story is going, but not much.
My specific question is, do you know if there are any other holy symbols that were used against Dracula where he was repulsed by? I'm trying to figure out if the comic made that progression or they simply limit it to crosses.
Um, Not within Tomb of Dracula during the middle run, because it takes Claremont to establish that Kitty Pryde can use her um, a Jewish necklace. I forget the name of it. Um, the star, the menorah. I think it's called not menorah.
Not a
Uh,
Minotaur.
uh, Star David. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. But she can use that to repel a vampire, and it works. So I think Claremont actually broadens that definition, but that's still
Okay.
like late 70s, so it's not too far from this. So there's a possibility that during the late end of the Tomb of Dracula run, that gets drawn back into the comic. I don't know for certain, but I will say for at least the first few years of it, it's crosses.
Because Doctor Who, the Seventh Doctor, did one of my favorite things for it. It's not necessarily whatever the symbol is; it's your belief in that symbol, and it could be
Yeah,
nearly anything as long as your belief is strong and like true. I
that's my
love
favorite
that tweak
interpretation of it.
so much.
Yeah, no, Curse Fenric. definitely shaped my view of how vampires should kind of work.
Yeah.
Um, so Dawn is like, you have to heed the Lord's word. You know, the same word that 3 pages ago told me to take a knife out of a skeleton. You should also follow my word again. Kill Satan's demon. And of course, they're all like, yeah, we're gonna kill Satan's demon. Um, and Dracula's like, oh shit. Um, but then, of course, within minutes, he's like, because they're grabbing me. And finally, of course, Dracula's like, I can't, not grandstand. So next panel, he's like, "You fools think you could take me? You're so wrong." And he turns to mist, and then basically, as they're grabbing, he turns the mists out of their reach, and then manifests back. So it's a cool little kind of action bit. And the whole time, like even while he's in mist, he's still talking shit. So much. I'm an immortal man. I'm so much more. For none may touch the Lord of Darkness, lest he so commands. None that is who wishes to live. None you wanton imbeciles. None shall see the full Dracula power of Dracula, Lord of the undead. And he's just like talking such mad shit. And and I just love this because like this is one of the reasons why I love his comics so much is because like he was killed. He was straight up killed beginning of his issue. Comes back to life through 0 of his own ability. Like, his plan to have the villagers take him away failed because his plan fell apart completely. Is pure luck that he gets the dagger taken out of his chest.
Well, his plan technically worked, Eddie.
It did get him to escape from
Technically.
the vampire hunters and then abandoned in the middle of a field.
And put him in the place to be found.
Right.
So technically, his plan
If the vampire hunters had, I don't know, looked out their window as opposed to decide to play a game of chess, maybe they would have found him.
worked.
It's like, "Oh, the villagers took him. Oh, I guess there's nothing we can do. There's no way we could possibly follow a huge group of villagers walking away from us."
So I'm going to give kudos to Dracula's plan that technically worked.
Right. But more to my point is that he wakes up, immediately surrounded by crosses, a whole bunch of humans trying to hunt him, and the whole time he's like, "Nope, I'm in complete control of the situation." And it's like, "Dude, you're not." I mean, appreciate the hustle, but dude, you are not in control of this situation.
But it is the next page in that display of power that had me fully agree with them
Yes.
putting Dracula into the Palladium system because he calls down a fucking lightning bolt in a storm.
Yes, straight up just shoot someone with lightning, and I'm just like, "Holy crap." Which, I mean, I will say that I know that some of the people at White Wolf, particularly, Rich Thomas, who I work with now, were fans of Tomb of Dracula, so I have to assume some of this at least inspired Vampire the Masquerade. So, like, of course, all vampires can now summon lightning because of this. I feel like this comic is a big part of that, right? Um, but not only does he summon lightning, he talks about summoning lightning for a whole page. I mean, Dracula had some speeches before, but an entire page is like, it's the very beginning. Look skyward as Dracula summons lightning itself, and then 5 panels of lightning summoning happens, where he's just like, "Crowl and cringe, bow before me. I am a god. Look at my squeeze my fingers. I'm gonna rescue you from clutches of death." And it's just like it's all part of the ritual. I have to talk for like 20 minutes before this ritual because there's a long casting time, so I got to fill this time. Amazing.
It is huge. Storm and lightning that he didn't do at will with the casting time, but still at will.
Yeah, yeah. And so Josiah Dawn is carrying this big, presumably metal, crucifix. And it's like he's holding it with 2 hands. It's huge, and then the lightning bolt hits the crucifix, just yeah, and basically electrocutes both him, shattering the cross, which means that Dracula's no longer being repelled by the cross because it's been physically destroyed. And so it's the again a moment of you could see glimmers of Dracula as tactical genius, right? His well, this is shifting, but like his actual long term planning is a little unbaked. He's no Doctor Who, right? But in the clench, when he's having to pull the fat out of the fire, he comes up with some amazing tactical stuff. And so, um, Dawn is dying, and it's like, Dracula again. This is a page and a half of Dracula straight up monologuing. No, I apologize. 2.5 pages. No other character has spoken but Dracula for 2.5 pages. Um, and, Dracula's like, "You summoned death to take me, and so you died is only befitting." And, Dawn's like, "No, no, you're wrong, because I have a soul and I'll die with peace of the Lord, but you'll never know peace." Um, so he's just grabbing Dracula's, lapels, trying to pull himself up, to explain. I was like, it's God that rules the world, not people like you. And Dracula gets angry. He's like, no, no, you're wrong. I'm Dracula. Dracula seed. While he's also turning to mist and getting it all away. So it's straight up like going, nuh-uh. And the comic backs me up. It's like the demon seethes, though he has made his kill and proven his point. So like he's mad about being called out about having no soul.
It was
And that's it. It's a comic.
This comic was a wild ride from top to bottom, is what that was.
Yeah, it is. It is. Took an unfortunate pit stop at racism, but it's frankly, you can ignore that subplot and nothing changes in this comic really. Um, but the rest of it is like Wolfman's finding the balance of ongoing storyline, kind of soap opera style storyline, while still having a strong, meaty thing so that people pick up individual issues, still have something that they can, you know, sink their teeth into. Eh. Um, but I mean, yeah. So you have this interesting storyline about a priest who loses his faith, stumbles across Dracula. I won't say Dracula manipulated him. This guy talks himself into uh, uh, finding his faith again, and then Dracula has to take control of that situation as fast as possible. Um, and it's the vampire hunters themselves do not look, except for Blade at the beginning, but the rest of the time they don't look great as a result of this. But it just this is peak Dracula just monologuing for all he's worth, and it's so much
Well,
fun.
seeing Dracula's, I'll now say, full display of power that he used against the priests is interesting in contrast versus the power he's used against the vampire hunters up to date,
Mhm.
because that shows that he's been playing with them most of the time.
Right?
Because if he could have pulled out like a lightning bolt in a storm, maybe because he needed to be outside. I'll say that.
Maybe.
So
Yeah.
maybe he could do it inside the house. I'll put that druid limit on it from D and D. Got to be outside and have weather effects.
Sure.
But
Yeah. Makes sense.
or if it's not for that, it would show you, if you want to look at it more positively, how exceptional the vampire hunters are to have been able to have stopped Dracula for as long as they have.
Right. And that's actually one thing I like about this issue, and that's a really good point, is that paradoxically, because Dracula is at his most powerful after he has been quote unquote killed, it retroactively makes his death that much more powerful. In that when these four hunters are working together and they're on their game, they are a match for Dracula. So it's like, oh wow, this guy can summon lightning bolts, and still Blade managed to get his blade into him. And so like they're in a way the bit at the beginning where they're just kind of shocked. Actually, when you sit down and think about it, actually makes sense because it's the oh crap, this guy's so powerful. We actually did it. We've been talking about it, but we actually did it. We got the thing we've been trying for so long. Um, and as much as I've been joking about the hunters, the thing is that I like the fact that they're really human too. They do make mistakes. If you barely by the skin of your teeth manage to kill vampire and kill Dracula, and then he gets dragged off by mesmerized people, and you almost got killed in that experience, you might just take a breath, right? It's like, okay, we don't know where he's at, so just take a minute and unwind. Let's not think about that. And in the current environment, that's actually weirdly a little more comforting, right? It is the when everything's gone to shit, maybe just take a second for yourself, you
Yeah.
know.
And the other thing is, since you brought up just how human they are, they've literally spent all night, oh, I'm sorry, all day tracking Dracula to then previously fight and kill Dracula to then endure Stampede. What else they got left in them to be able to do
Right,
for that day?
right,
Like, it's not even
right.
taking a beat. It's just sheer exhaustion, if nothing else. Because they're not paranormal. They're just people, trained people,
Right.
but still people.
Yeah. So I mean, uh, personally, I maybe would have drawn that panel a little differently, made it a little less casual per se. But I still get the aesthetic. There's I joke a lot about this comic because it's fun to goof on it. But the reality is, for all of its rough edges, there's a strong core here that's really fun and just not something you're seeing in other comic books of the time period, really.
What about In Dracula Lives? Am I not saying any of this?
I actually, I have to reread Dracula Lives. Hilariously, I didn't know this when we first pitched, the story, but the combination I have, or the compilation I have, literally ends next issue, and then after that, it's just Dracula's Lives. I thought it was, like, maybe 1 or 2 issues, but it was, like, 4 or 5. So after we're done doing that, I'm actually gonna go through and read the Dracula's Lives stuff, but I'm honestly probably not gonna enjoy it as much because I remember vaguely reading it before and not enjoying it as much because it doesn't have vampire hunters in it. It's just Dracula doing Dracula stuff. And I like Dracula. I love Dracula, but Dracula in the contrast of these particular group of people is specifically fun.
Interesting. And I'd almost assume that he doesn't monologue nearly as much then in Dracula Lives without them being there to antagonize him.
I don't think so, no. But that's my hazy memory of it. I'll have to read through it and find out because you're right. I think these people get under his skin in a very specific way. And he the more I reread this, the more I definitely feel like Dracula is definitely compensating, right? It's no, no, I'm also I'm amazing. Let me tell you for a very long time how amazing I am. The goddamn world of night.
So, what is the next issue? The
Uh,
last one, our final coverage of the Tomb of Dracula.
so according to the end of this issue, it is called Bloodbath. According
Nice.
to the cover of next issue, it is How Long Will Vampires Stay Dead? But the actual title is Fear is the name of the game. Comics. Uh,
Ah, it's like
So
Russian
if people want
blood
to
at that
talk to
point.
you, Chris, on the best ways to run a Rifts game, where do they find you online?
Come to Blue Sky so I can tell everyone at once about it, and that'll be at Darker Hue. I would happily talk about how to run a Rift game. I've run a lot of Robotech using Palladium too, because I think that is the best Robotech system that I've played. Take
Out of
that,
all of
people
them.
that play Robotech specifically.
And if you want to talk to me about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you can find me also on Blue Sky. I'm at pugsteady.com. But you also find both of us on the Darker Hue Discord, where we would happily talk about tabletop role playing games and frequently do, or about this comic. And
Or you can find me talking about Watson right now in the Discord.
yeah, yeah, we're talking about the new CBS show Watch, which I can't watch, so I'm just kind of vicariously learning from people that it's apparently an okay show, which is okay. It's okay to have just okay stuff.
Yeah. Once again, the one of the key words we have for the podcast is watchable. Watchability is essential.
Indeed. So with that, we will see you next time with our last issue of Tomb of Dracula.